CPAP, of course, stands for continuous positive airway pressure. And it's a device that applies that continuous positive airway pressure in a continuous manner. It doesn't change. Once you set it to a certain pressure, then that's the pressure that it stays at when the patient's breathing on it. An APAP machine looks just the same as a CPAP machine. And an APAP machine is just an automatically adjusting PAP device that will give one pressure at a time, but it will vary. That pressure will vary according to the patient's needs. And so that's an auto CPAP or an APAP device. And then there's BiPAP devices. A BiPAP is a BiPAP from the standpoint that it delivers an inspiratory pressure, which is always higher than the expiratory pressure, and that's a BiPAP machine. So two pressures, inspiratory pressure and an expiratory pressure, and that's what makes it BiPAP. The first thing, of course, is how do you make adjustments in the various parts of the PAP device? How do you turn pressures up and down? How do you change various features of it? And that, of course, is done with the major brands, is done within the digital menu that you read out on the screen. And with the Respironics brand, the clinical menu or the provider menu, which is the menu, by the way, that the patient should not be accessing. There's too many opportunities to get their therapy out of adjustment if the patient is making these adjustments many times. So it is preferred to have these adjustments made by a technician or a trained professional. But in order to get into that menu, this knob will be turned to where we light up the screen that says the setup, and then you hold down these two buttons, this small button here and the main button here, for 5 seconds. At which point in time you will hear a double beep, and that will put you into what's called the provider menu, which then allows you to make adjustments in whether or not what pressure you're going to be set at. Even within the modes, many of these PAP devices can be either used as a CPAP machine or a BiPAP machine or an auto machine. Some of them have lots of different versatility, and of course that would affect the therapy being administered correctly if that mode was being changed. There's many other little features that we could go into at a different time, but that's all accessed through that provider menu. These major brands are also designed to where if you are in the provider menu and you stop making adjustments for a minimal period of time, then it will electronically revert back to the user menu or the patient menu. And that's a safety mechanism. We don't want it to be accidentally left in the provider menu so that the patient can access all the parts of the menu that they really shouldn't be accessing. So that will automatically bounce back if you stop making adjustments. The user menu is accessible just by turning the knob to the setup part of it, and the patient will then just enter there. And when I say enter, they are taking the button, this knob here that would be used to turn it on and off, and just pushing it down. And that's essentially like the enter key on the keyboard of your computer. So you turn this button, highlight the right part of the screen. This particular screen is divided up into 4 quadrants, and you just turn the knob until the right quadrant is lit up, and then push the button down, and that opens up the menu. For the patient, they can look at certain features of the device, and that would be things like how much ramp they would be setting. A ramp, of course, is the feature that is built into most of the PAP devices available today that allows the amount of pressure being delivered through the PAP device to be lowered to a minimal setting, and then over a set period of time, and that's adjustable by the patient too, over the set period of time, usually traditionally anywhere from 5 to 45 minutes, they will be able to adjust that to where it will drop down to a minimal pressure at the start and then ramp the pressure up to the therapeutic or the set pressure over that time period. And that is, of course, just another comfort feature for the patient. As the CPAP industry has learned a long time ago, the biggest issue with patient compliance is really 2 points. One is mask fit, and we've discussed masks already. The other point that is important to the patient is how does that air feel blowing in the face. And so that's where if the patient's on a high amount of pressure, that can start, and if they try to initiate that right away, that can be uncomfortable. So the ramp can be useful to help that start out lower and then work its way up. So that would be the ramp feature, and on this particular device, the ramp is accessed by the patient when they're using this just by pressing this small button here. This is the ramp button, and it's similar buttons on the other brands. The other comfort feature that is accessible within the menu, both patient menu and clinical menu, is a feature called Flex, or ResMed calls it expiratory pressure relief, EPR, but it is essentially pressure relief. What was discovered some time ago is that the patient who is on CPAP really requires the full CPAP pressure, the therapeutic pressure, if you will, only requires that amount of pressure during certain parts of their breathing cycle, primarily on the inspiratory part and the second half of the expiratory phase. But during the first half of the expiratory phase of the breathing, the patient does not require all of the pressure that's been provided or prescribed for and that the device is delivering. So if you have a flex feature that will allow the amount of pressure that the patient experiences on the initial part of their exhalation to drop down lower, and therefore to become more comfortable to breathe on. It's the most difficult part about CPAP is breathing out. It's pretty easy to breathe in when you have all that pressure blowing in your face, but it's more difficult to breathe out. So if the device had a feature that allowed the pressure to diminish slightly, it would be a benefit to the patient, and indeed it is. Flex has been rather instrumental over the last couple years in helping patients be more compliant with their therapy. And that's so I always encourage the patients to use the flex modes. Ramp is not necessarily used as frequently, and you will find, as a customer service group, you will find that the new patients, the patients who have not experienced PAP therapy in the past, will appreciate and benefit from the flex settings and setting that flex at the proper level. It's also been noted that experienced patients who have been on PAP for a period of time and may be buying their second or third or even fourth CPAP machine that they've been using, most of those patients at that point in the process no longer feel any benefit from flex, and they would prefer to just disable that feature and get the full pressure right away, the first breath. So, and that's just a little hint to folks that are trying to help patients adjust. So you'll find, once again, the new patient will benefit from flex. The existing or long-term patient will not necessarily appreciate it in the same way. So you want to give them an opportunity to turn that on or off, and they can within the menu there.